All right, we're recording now. Before I dive into the fun stuff, I just want to let you know where some resources are. So, what you're looking at on the screen right now is my VoiceThread homepage, and I have this set to view the basic tutorials. So, if you ever want to brush up on these or direct your students to the tutorials, everybody can access these from their homepage by going to this three-bar menu and filtering to just see the tutorials. All right, there's also the blue help tab down here on the bottom right. This is where you can search by keyword for any questions you might have. So if you're looking to see how something works in Moodle, you can always search and you can find the help documentation for faculty, students, or administrators. Underneath that is the About menu, where you can contact our support team, check out the research that's been done on VoiceThread, or visit our blog. And next to that is our training menu where you can sign up for our free workshops. So we do offer workshops each month throughout the year, and you're welcome to sign up for as many of those as you like. We're just about to wrap up the 2022 workshop season, but we're going to be announcing the January sessions real soon. And finally, on the left-hand side, you can see the groups and courses panel. All right. And these course groups are created automatically whenever you configure any of the LTI links in ASU Learn Moodle. All right. So those are the basics of where you can find the information. I just wanted to kind of go over the basics of VoiceThread now, if just in case you missed the introductory session, just to catch you up to speed. VoiceThread is an asynchronous multimedia slideshow that allows you to have a discussion with your students wherever you like. So you can upload all different sorts of media, make all different types of comments, audio, webcam, text, and you can share them in your course and the students can interact. The students can create voice threads as well. Right. And just as a refresher, if you're not familiar, the creation process works like this. So on my homepage, I click on the Create tab, and the first step is to add my slides. So I'm going to click Add Media, and you can see there are 6 different ways to bring slide content into the VoiceThread. I'm going to go through my computer, but I could go through the media sources and, for example, connect to my Google account and import some content that I have in my Google Drive. I could record directly as a webcam video. And I can also import from YouTube. If I use the URL option, I can paste a YouTube link here and click Save. These two in the middle, I wouldn't really worry too much about the audio recording. This is for an audio only slide. And the one after that is the webcam photo, which is basically a selfie slide. Most of the time, you'll probably be focusing on uploading files from your computer. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. So if I click on my computer, I can go through my files here and I can find whatever it is that I want to add to this voice thread. And remember, this can be all different types of media: images, PowerPoint, documents, video files, whatever you like. I'm going to call this one Portfolio Lesson, and I'm going to click Save. All right. Now, I could add more files from any of these sources. I could add a YouTube video, record from my webcam, whatever I want to add to this. And I can change the order of the slides just by dragging and dropping them where I want them. All right, but if I'm happy with what I have, I'm ready to move on to the second and final step, which is to comment. So if I click comment, that opens the voice thread up in the media player, and now I can start to record my narration. So I click on the plus sign. I can choose from one of 5 commenting options: text, telephone, audio, webcam, or file upload. So let's say I want to go with an audio comment. I click on the microphone, and now I'm recording. All right. And while you record an audio or webcam comment, you will see the pencil icon. So if I click on this, this is what we call the doodle tool. I can choose different colors and decide if I want my drawings to fade or not. So I'm going to keep this set to fade, but I'm going to change the color to blue. And I can annotate however I need to on the slide and draw my student's eye to whatever it is that I want them to see. And when I'm done, I click stop. It'll process my comment and play it back, and I can cancel, save, or record more. Phone. And now I'm recording. All right, so I click save and my comment is being saved in the conversation channel for slide one. Now I can use my navigation arrows in the bottom right to go to my next slide, and I can continue to record whatever it is that I want to say here. Let's change colors again and go to red, and I can annotate once again however I need. When I'm done, I click stop, and I can cancel, save, or record more. Whatever it is. All right, I can repeat that process as many times as I need throughout the voice thread. My students could comment on it the same way just by clicking on the plus sign and recording answers to my questions, or sharing their thoughts or asking questions. Before we get into today's theme of storytelling lesson design, do we have any questions about the creation process? Is there anything that I showed that doesn't quite click, or something you were hoping to see about creating a voice thread that I didn't show? You can always feel free to type in the chat in the Go to Training Control panel, or unmute your mic to ask. I don't see any questions yet. If you do have them, let me know. Otherwise, we can get into talking about some storytelling. All right. So, first thing I want to do is just kind of break down what do I mean by storytelling, and what are the basic elements. And I mean, you can find a dozen, 2 dozen people that have slightly different definitions of what this story is and what storytelling means. But I think the common thread that you'll find in all of the different explanations, whether it's a 3-act structure, a 5-act structure, whether it's about storytelling for business or writing a screenplay, whatever it may be, they all kind of have these three basic elements of characters that encounter some problem and have to try to solve it, right? So, characters, problem, solution, those are the three basic elements of any story. So, to use this in education, I think there's a lot of literature. If you look at some of the research out there about narrative structure and how it aids in memory when you're asking students to remember various processes and different things that you want them to know in your class, and you want them to remember it long after your class ends. Having built it into their brain as a story is a great way to create those lasting memories for the concepts. All right, so I just want to talk briefly about a couple of books that I recommend if you are interested in the idea of storytelling. This first one is called On the Origin of Stories, and this talks about how storytelling evolved, kind of back in the Stone Age and before, with humans, early humans. And what the basic idea here that the author tries to bring up is that storytelling is a simulation of situations we may encounter, scenarios we may encounter in the future. So a lot of the reason why storytelling works is because the listener or the reader or whoever is engaging with the story and consuming the story can put themselves into the story as a character and then see how events may unfold that they may encounter in the future. So it's a safe way to do this. It's a simulation where there's no consequences for making bad decisions. You see in movies all the time characters that do things that we would never do in real life, and hopefully, if the movie has some sense of realism to it, you'll see the consequences that can happen, and you'll get a sense of what it will be like to go through something after you've made some bad decisions or after you've made some good decisions, right? So that's kind of one of the basic starting points, that stories can serve as simulations in a safe way. This is another book I just want to mention briefly called AI 2041. This is a book that I found really interesting because of the format. There were a number of different ideas about artificial intelligence, but this was not a nonfiction book and it wasn't a fiction book. It was a blend of the two. So, what the author would do in this book was write a short story where there are characters that engaged with artificial intelligence in the not too distant future in the year 2041, and what their daily life was like, with AI controlling a number of their processes and relationships and transportation and things like that. So you would get a kind of a narrative fiction story, and then the next chapter would be the nonfiction version, where the author talked about, how the technology evolved and where it's going in the future and how it works on a technical level. And then the third chapter would start a brand new story, and then there would be another technical display. So I thought this was a really interesting way to teach these concepts, kind of bring the reader in with the narrative structure, and then hit them with the technical stuff. If this book was all technical, it might not have been as interesting. And if it was all fiction, it might not have had the depth and the rigor that you would want, in an academic setting. But I think the combination of these two ideas together, I think really worked well for what the author was trying to accomplish. All right. Now, these next few slides are some that I've created or imported from other voice threads, from things that I've seen that are private, to certain courses and things like that. But just to give you some ideas about how you can blend this in, I'm going to touch on a variety of different subject areas, but a lot of these concepts can be applied to whatever subject you may teach. So there may be a language idea or a physics idea or a business idea, but some of these aspects can translate into a variety of subjects. So let's pretend this is a voice thread where I'm the instructor and I ask a question, and then there's a video slide. So if you remember, when I was creating this voice thread earlier, one of the options I had was to import videos from YouTube, right? That URL option, I can paste a YouTube link. That's what you see on this slide. This slide is a video slide. All right. So I start this off with a question, and this is a physics class. So, based on what we know about pressure and surface area from chapter 6, would Wonder Boy be able to catch the building and save the people inside? So, this video gets into a scenario with these imaginary superheroes and the physics of kind of superhero powers.
Good morning, Wonder Boy. Glad to see you survived the cosmic rays.
Hark! That building is falling! I'll catch it, don't worry!
Wait, Wonder Boy, it doesn't work that way. To stop the building from falling, Newton's first law states that we need to apply an external force. But is your mega strength enough to counteract the force of the falling building? Let's find out. We have to determine the force of the falling building. For this, we can use Newton's second law. Force equals mass times acceleration. That building must weigh millions of pounds, and because of Earth's gravity, we know it is accelerating downward at 1 g.
All right, so I'm going to stop there. But if I scrub along, you'll see that he continues to go on and ask questions and then show how to solve these questions, right? So instead of just having, kind of a lecture or a textbook lesson, he's getting into some deeper physics, and there's equations here, but it's all couched in the framework of a narrative, right? So you can see that the students can solve problems like this. They can watch this and they can learn how to solve these problems, and then they can solve them on their own. So the instructor could, remember, ask that question, would Wonder Boy be able to catch the building based on what we know about pressure and surface area, right? So then you can have the students weigh in, you can discuss, debate, and kind of suss out the answer through discussion on VoiceThread. All right, now here's one that's more for medical classes. In this one, the question would be something like, examine the image and tell me what you see. Based on what you see, what would you do next? So the goal here is to have these medical students examine this x-ray and kind of diagnose what the problem is, and then discuss courses of treatment. So this is a simple case study. It's only a one slide story, but we introduce the character here, right? 64-year-old woman presents with pain in her left foot. She heard it while jogging. She doesn't have a history of arthritis or other complaints. And then the examination, vital signs are normal. There's tenderness and slight redness. The pulse is strong. So, what does the image show, and what should you do next, right? So, if you are a medical student, this is a great way to kind of bring these x rays to life. If you would just have a picture of an x ray and ask the students to diagnose it, they could do it, but it may not present itself in as realistic of a scenario, right? We talked about using stories as simulations, and this is a great area to kind of show why that's valuable. In the medical field, you don't want students to encounter things for the first time out in a hospital setting, out in an emergency room. You want to expose them to as many scenarios as possible, but you don't want to have someone's health hanging in the balance of an undergrad who may not be as comfortable and experienced as a doctor may be, right? So you can kind of get through and make mistakes here, and no one suffers any damages. There are no problems. There are no consequences outside of maybe getting a poor grade on an assessment. But the students can exchange information, discuss. You can facilitate, and you can kind of further their learning with that story narrative. All right, now here's another one. This is one that's more for a business class. So the idea here is about user personas. So when you create any type of a technology tool that folks are going to use, some type of interface for a bank or in a car or whatever it may be, it always helps to have a persona, and those personas are basically kind of a median user, right? What is the market look like? What are the people who use your product? What are their kind of demographic touch points and characteristics? And it helps to know who you're designing products for, right? Whether it's an older demographic, a younger demographic, that might change how you arrange things, the size of fonts, the colors, all of that stuff can change depending on who's using your product. So, question right here could be, using this template, create a user persona for your business idea and cite data from your research. So let's say these students in a business class, maybe it's an entrepreneurship class, and they have to come up with a business idea as part of this semester long project. This could be, one of the activities they do during the week where they have to create a user persona based on the information that they found out about their market and who would be using a product in that kind of vertical that they're in the business world. So this persona slide here talks about the user's name, their gender, their age, where they live, what they do for a living, what their income is, right? And this is something that you can use to generate some discussion. You can ask questions about this persona, ask the students what's missing, what do we need? Is there any information here that's not helpful? What would you include? What wouldn't you include? And discussing how you might change this if you adjusted some of these variables, right? Instead of a 40-year-old male who lives in New York, what if this was a 23-year-old female who lives in South Dakota? How would that change things? So there are lots of areas for discussion here, but it all is based out of this story idea. You have a character and you have some problems and some solutions here. All right. So those were some ideas that I wanted to bring to you just to kind of get you thinking about storytelling. But now I want to transition to some examples. So this first one is an example from a language course. This teacher teaches English as a second language. And what he's done is create a story for his students to listen to. So he's going to evaluate their listening comprehension. He's going to speak in a language they can understand, with words that match their vocabulary acquisition level. But he's going to go through this story, and then when he gets towards the end, he's going to ask them what happened. All right, so that's the big formative assessment type of question, making sure that they know what they heard up to this point. So it's assessing their listening comprehension. And then on the next slide, he says what happens next. He wants them to finish the story. So it's a creative way to have the students access some of their vocabulary, reinforce that they know what the story was about, right? You can't have an ending to a story if you don't understand what the story is about. So this, I think, was a pretty clever lesson idea. And I'll just play a little bit of this for you so you get a sense of what he created.
Shipwrecked. Listen to the following story. I will tell it to you while you look at the pictures, but I will stop before the end. Your assignment is to finish the story yourself. Have fun. The story begins. The air on the empty tropical coast had a story to tell if there had been anyone there to listen. The slate gray sky and the warm, humid wind told of a storm that was raging just over the horizon. But the beach was empty. The palm trees bowed and danced in the rising wind, but everyone who could have listened to the message had long since taken shelter.
All right. So once again, with this story, what we can see is are those three basic elements, right? There's a character that's introduced, there's a problem, and there are solutions to be offered at various points. So he's going to go through this story, talk about the shipwreck, talk about all the various adventures this person encountered, and then he's asking what happened.
Question number one. No one could see the storm on the beach because at first the beach is empty.
First question. The beach was empty, so nobody see the storm.
All right, so you can see how the students are taking turns answering here, and the instructor can always reply. You can even reply with private feedback. If you see that lock icon in the comment bubble, you can click on that, and your comment will be connected to the student's comment, and then you can record your private reply, giving that student whatever feedback they need. Right? And then on the next slide, he talks about what happens next, and this requires the students to get a little creative and demonstrate that they can generate sentences and not just kind of listen and understand, but they can contribute in a meaningful way using the language. All right, now this story I thought was interesting because this is like a library media specialist, and he's talking to students about where to go for research, whether you should use search engines on the internet or you should use the databases that are it through the school accounts, the library, and things like that. So he kind of couches this in terms of a story. There are characters. In this case, the characters are the databases and the search engines, and they're competing with each other for to see who is the best, right? So that's kind of the conflict that's involved here. They're competing to see who's the best.
In this corner, we have databases. They give you organized information by experts, paid for by the school. And in this corner, we have search engines, which are paid for by advertisements, so you can search the web for free. Round one, experts. It looks like Britannica, an online database, has brought experts and scholars with it. What will the search engines do? Uh-oh, it looks like anyone can make a website that can be found using a search engine. And then the search engines take a hit. Round two, number of results. Facts on File and Google are pulling everything they have on China. Facts on File looks like it's brought about 2,000 articles with it. Google seems to have nearly gotten 2 billion results. It's going to take a lifetime to get through all those. Search engines swing and miss.
All right, so you can see how the instructor here is, kind of trying to gently push the students towards the databases and comparing them as this contest kind of gives them some reasons to use this, as opposed to him just putting this, as an instruction. Make sure you use databases, don't use Google. He's putting it into the form of a story so the students can remember the different points he's making. And if they had questions on the voice thread, they can always click on the plus sign to ask. All right, now here's one that I thought was really interesting. This was created by an instructional designer. And what she did was she uploaded a bunch of tutorials for a tool she's teaching her faculty, which is Google Calendar. But instead of just uploading these tutorials as is, she uploaded them all to VoiceThread, but she started off with a story structure here. So she's going to introduce a character and talk about some of the problems that this character has and how Google Calendar can solve these problems for her. So she's giving the person who's watching these tutorials a reason, a scenario that they might encounter in the future, and showing them how this tool can improve their workflow.
I want to introduce you to Laura. Here she is. Laura is a busy mom with 2 kids and 1 on the way. She's married to her husband, Tom, who is right over here, and both of them work full-time jobs. Laura's life is extremely hectic. And she started realizing that she was missing appointments all the time.
All right, so you can see the characters introduced, the problems introduced, and then she's going to go through, and when she gets into the actual tutorials, she doesn't spend a whole lot of time with the story, but she builds it up so that you understand what the character is and what the problem is. And then she weaves that character throughout the story as this kind of an avatar for whoever's watching this.
Okay, so we're here and we're working with Laura's checklist. The first thing on her checklist is how to create an event. And currently we're just working with her regular calendar. Now, here mine says IT training because obviously we are in a training course, but you can just pretend that this would say her name. So we want to create an event on her calendar so she can start to organize her life. And we're going to show her 2 ways of doing that. The first way is the long way, where we're going to click the create button here in the upper left-hand corner and then just create an event. So why don't we put her work schedule in? So we'll put in work. That's it.
All right, so you can see this tutorial series is something that can be really helpful, but because she brought in that narrative structure, this is something that can be more memorable, and it puts it into context and gives people a greater sense of when and where and how they might use something like this. All right, now here's one that is another one that could be used for language. So this is actually a K-12 example, but I think this could work on, you know, undergrad language acquisition as well. This is a simple story that the teacher uploaded to VoiceThread, and the students are going to read the story. So this is a way to evaluate pronunciation. Instead of just having them read through a list, they're reading a story, so that once again they see the words in context, how the words work together, what words they fit with normally, and it gives the student a more immersive language experience.
Mr. Big is a giant. He lives in a very big house with a beautiful garden, but Mr. Big isn't happy. The children in the town are scared of Master Big. I don't like children. The giant is coming! Run!
All right, so you can see how these are 3 different students that are playing different roles. And this is something you can do, you know, as students are learning a different language, whether it's French or Spanish or Mandarin, having slides where there's kind of a role play and there's a story involved, and the students can all engage with this. All right, now here's the final example I want to show you today, and this is from a nurse educator. So in this one, she went through a case study scenario for a nurse, and she created a PowerPoint. Now you can upload a PowerPoint directly to VoiceThread, and you can have, let's say you have a 20-slide presentation, you would have a 20-slide VoiceThread. And we always recommend exporting it as a PDF first and then uploading, because you can avoid formatting issues. But in this scenario, the teacher who created this wanted the animations because they were kind of integral to the story. So if you upload as a PDF, you won't have those animations. So what she did was, instead of exporting as a PDF, which is what you would normally do, she exported this as a movie file. So it's only a 1-slide VoiceThread because her whole presentation is going to play like a movie because there's an animated element here. All right, but I'm going to just play her introductory comment and then play a little bit of her presentation.
Hi, everyone.
This is a story that I give in a nursing course. And the topic that we talk about is communication. And the example here pretty much goes over.
All right, so she's going to talk about this basic scenario that a new nurse may encounter.
Immediately following graduation from her nursing program, Kay Smiley takes on an entry level position on a busy surgical unit in a small general hospital. With no orientation, she was assigned to work the evening shift with one registered nurse and two aides. During her second week, when the registered nurse calls in ill, Kay is told by the evening supervisor that she is charge nurse this evening, and a float nurse will be sent as soon as possible to help with the workload. Soon after, the surgeon arrives and rapidly gives verbal instructions to limit his pre-op craniotomy patient's hair shaving to the incision site only. When the preparation procedure is done in the operating suite tomorrow. As a student, Kay never spoke to a physician. He writes an order stating the client will be shaved according to head nurse's instructions. He asks Kay to call the operating room to relay those instructions, which she does. Nothing is in the record describing the area to be shaved. When the day
All right, so I'm going to stop there, but you can see how once again she introduces the characters, talks about the problem, and then she's going to ask the students to offer a solution. So this is another situation where you have that simulation idea. The students can kind of live the life of a nurse in a story, and they don't have to deal with consequences of making the wrong decisions that they that might come back and hurt a patient or hurt their standing in the hospital or something like that. They can experiment here because this is just a simulation, right? So they can talk through ideas and discuss how where things went wrong and how you could prevent this from happening in the future, and they can work on building their professional skills. All right, so those are some storytelling examples. Now, keep in mind when you create something like this as a learning object for your students, you can add it a few different ways into your ASU Learn. You can add it as an individual voice thread, which would be non-graded, right? That's how you add, any lectures or non-graded discussions. But you could also add it as an assignment. You can have a comment assignment where students need to comment on it a specific number of times, and you can set that up as well. Before I show you those, adding it those two different ways, I just wanted to pause to see if we have any questions about any of the examples or any of the features that I've shown so far. Well, if we don't have questions, then let's just talk through those two scenarios. So let's say I wanted to add a story that I created on VoiceThread as a non-graded type of lesson. You can find where you want to add this in. So let's say maybe I'm going into topic 1, and the process for adding these LTI links is the same for all of them, except the different choices you make at the very end. So I click add an activity or resource. I find VoiceThread in my list and I click on it. I give this link a name. And I'm going to click select content. And that's going to load my configuration menu. All right, and here's where I decide what I want this link to be. Do I want it to be a simple link to the home page? Do I want to take my students into the course group? No, what I want to do now is share an individual voice thread, right? The individual voice thread option is the one that you use anytime you want to share a voice thread, and that's not an assignment. All right, so we get into the other options in that introductory session. If you haven't seen that one, you may want to check with Emery and get the recording there. But I can go through and I can find the voice thread that I want to share. I click on it. I click continue. I can make any changes that I need here. I can edit the title. I can add more slides if I want. I can continue, make any comments that I need. And then I can decide which comment types will be allowed. So if I'm asking my students questions, maybe I only want them to use their voice. So I'm only going to leave those options. I can have threaded commenting turned on so the students can engage with each other. I can limit the length of their comments if I want. I can set that to any number I like up to 60 minutes. I can decide if this should start playing when it's opened, if it should automatically advance. And then we have those additional permissions where students can download the slides or convert the VoiceThread to a video file or make a copy of it. I usually leave these blank, but they're there if you need them. And then I can click continue and publish. That brings me back to my ASU Learn Moodle page where I can save and return to course or save and display. All right, so when a student comes into the course, they see the link, they click on it, it will load that voice thread, and the student can play it, listen to what you had to say, ask questions if they need, and engage with the content. All right, but you can also add these as comment assignments if you're going to ask the students questions, like in that nursing scenario or that shipwrecked story with the language, where you're going to be evaluating the students based on their answers. You may want to share it as a comment assignment, which would connect to your ASU Learn gradebook. So let's say that's the scenario that I'm going to do. My process starts off the same way. I click add an activity or resource. I find VoiceThread in the list and I click on it. I call this one Story Quiz 1. Check the grading. So maybe this is worth 50 points. And then I select my content. That's going to open the configuration menu. But now I'm going to go into the assignment builder. And anything I do through the assignment builder creates a gradebook column. And I can choose from 3 different assignment types where the students create the voice thread, where they just have to watch a voice thread, or the one that I want here for this quiz is one where they have to comment on the voice thread. So I click comment and continue. I find the voice thread I want them to comment on. Continue. Can make any changes that I need. And once again, I can decide on some settings. Up top, there are 2 new ones that we have not seen. Number of comments required. So maybe I'm asking the students 3 questions. So I'm going to require 3 answers, and I can have this be a minimum, maximum, or exact number. I can decide if students should be able to add slides to this, which types of comments they can make, whether I want threaded commenting turned on so we can engage with each other, or if this is really a quiz, do I want to turn on comment moderation? Comment moderation is the feature that makes all of the incoming comments hidden. So for a quiz where you don't want students to see or hear each other's answers, you want to make sure you turn comment moderation on. Once again, I can limit the length of their comments. I can have it start playing when opened. I can have it auto advance. Right, and then it brings me here where I can add my instructions. I can pick a start date for this assignment and a due date. And if I want, I can have a close date, right? Students can submit after the due date, but if I have a close date, that means the assignment will no longer accept submissions after the close date. And if a student does submit after the due date, it will show up in your grading interface as submitted late, and it'll be highlighted in red. I can decide if I want students to be able to withdraw and resubmit the assignment, and then how do I want to grade this? So this is going to be on a scale of 1 to 50. I publish. That brings me back to my ASU Learn where I can save and return to course or save and display. All right, I know there were a few questions that Emery had sent me from folks. So one of them was about comments. And if you go create a comment assignment, the student that answers, so this, in this case, we only have this one test student in the class, but you would see a list of all of your students. But if this was a comment assignment, you would see all of his comments or her comments right here. All right, so it collates it all for you. It puts it all under their name, so you can go from one comment to the next, and then you can enter a grade. Once the student submits, there would be a grade right here that you can then enter, and it would go right into the ASU grade book. So searching for commenters in the comment assignment is just a matter of clicking on the assignment link, and then you'll see them all once you click on the student's name. There were some other questions about notifications. So yeah, students do receive email notifications, and they'll go, if they go to their homepage, they will see a little orange flag in the corner of each voice thread, letting them know how many comments they have not heard. Someone had asked about removing students if they drop the course. So that happens automatically as part of your integration. It takes a day for the roster to sync, but if a student drops today, by the end of the day tomorrow, they will not appear in your list of students in your course roster on VoiceThread anymore. And the other question involved managing your homepage. So the more you use VoiceThread, the more voice threads that you'll have, the more voice threads will be shared with you. So it always helps to know how to kind of keep things in order. But there is this 3-bar menu that I showed you earlier in the context of looking for tutorials, but you can filter your homepage view any number of ways, alphabetically, by newest first, by oldest first, as a list or thumbnail view, which is what I have here. You can just see the voice threads that are owned by you, just see the voice threads that are shared with you, or just see the tutorials like I did earlier. All right, and when it comes to the courses and groups, the newest one will always be at the bottom. So I know there are some institutions that have the course has the exact same name. So I know we frequently recommend trying to name the course with some type of a date stamp on it. So, History 101 Fall 2022 or something like that. But if you just have the course called History 101 and you teach it every semester, you will see History 101 course groups in your list over here. Just understand that the newest one will be at the bottom. So any previous semesters will appear here. The newest one will be at the bottom. And if you ever wanted to archive an old course, you can do that as well. If you click on the gear icon next to any course group, you can disable the course, all right, and that will remove it from your list. I think those were all the questions Emery had sent me earlier. Do we have any other questions before we wrap things up today? Is there anything else you wanted to see? Anything else you wanted to talk about? Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. All right, thank you, Denise. All right, well, if we have no other questions, I'm going to send this recording to Emery in just a few minutes. You can check with him about where he'll post it. And I just wanted to thank you for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your week and a great rest of your semester. Happy voice starting, folks.